What's up, YouTube? In today's video, I'm going to be going over the best settings that you guys can be using right now in Warzone 3 after the most recent update. I still am getting a lot of questions about my settings over on Twitch, so hopefully if you guys are coming over from there to this video, this should cover any questions that you guys may have. Before I jump into all of these settings, G Fuel is doing a huge sale right now where you can use code KP to save big. There's also a link in the description that if you click it, it'll automatically apply the discount so you guys save the most. By far the best sugar-free energy formula on the market right now, so I highly recommend you guys check them out. Now let's jump right into the first setting. So to kick things off, we're gonna be kind of going over this in a little bit of an out of order fashion. I'm gonna talk about my controller settings towards the end. I'm not gonna talk about any keyboard and mouse settings because I don't play keyboard and mouse. I don't know anything about that, and I just gotta put a little disclaimer since I don't want to waste your guys' time. All right, so for the graphic settings, my display mode, you want to make sure that this is set to full screen exclusive. The reason for full screen exclusive is because if you have it on borderless, extended window, or windowed, we're gonna actually be introducing input delay to your game. So while it might be a little bit more convenient for your setup, it's actually going to significantly harm your ability to play, and apparently the input delay is pretty noticeable. Next off, your display monitor and adapter, you just want to make sure that's set to your graphics card and your monitor. Make sure your screen refresh rate is set to the highest possible. Display resolution, make sure it's on whatever res you want to play on. Aspect ratio, you should probably leave that on automatic, it's just easier. Shader stuff you don't have to worry about. Display gamma should be on 2.2. Brightness settings, I don't really change a whole lot. I usually just leave it at the default of 50. For the NVIDIA reflex low latency graphics setting, I like to put this on plus boost. Most people use on because the on setting has a lot more consistent latency when it comes to your delay, whereas using on plus boost on some setups can cause variance in your input delay, making your game feel a little inconsistent. I personally use on plus boost. I haven't noticed a huge difference. For the eco preset mode, this by default is on efficiency and it should be on custom. Efficiency is going to basically reduce your power draw on your PC. I think this is a setting on consoles too. It's going to basically hinder your performance of the device you're playing on. I'm going to set this on custom and take that off. The VSync stuff, I turn all that off even in the menus. Doesn't really matter. Custom frame limit, you can set this to whatever you want. Some people just leave it on unlimited. I like to cap minus 60 when I'm sitting at the main menu, so I'm not frying my graphics card. And then for the most part, man, you can just copy paste these settings. They're not even really worth mentioning. Just make sure they're on what I'm showing here. Next off, for the quality settings, make sure your render resolution is set to 100. This should also match the resolution that was on the previous screen shown in display resolution. For some weird reason in this game, it will reset down to 50%. Sometimes it'll reset to 60. I don't quite understand why it does that, but just make sure it's on 100. For the next setting, we're going to be using the fidelity cast. Do not use DLSS. I saw a pretty prominent streamer upload a settings video with DLSS on or the image scaling. And long story short, man, you guys shouldn't be using any of these options besides fidelity cast, especially DLSS. If someone tells you to use DLSS, run. Using DLSS, while it gives you a little bit more frames because it's generating the frames for you, it introduces a crap ton of input delay and it makes your game look like literal crap. Use fidelity cast and make sure you set it from anywhere from 75 up to 100. I like to use 100 because that's the most sharp setting you can set it to. This is a really important setting for console players especially. This is one of those settings that is on console. It will significantly improve the clarity of your game. I honestly think it's the most important console setting you can set right now. Make sure path tracing and ray construction are turned off. VRAM scale, you can leave it from anywhere from 80 to 90. I like to use the 85, just kind of that happy medium. I play on a single PC, so I can set mine a little bit higher. It doesn't really matter. Variable rate shading needs to be off. And then for the rest of these texture qualities and all that stuff, just make sure you guys copy paste these settings. I don't want to spend a ton of time explaining each and every one of these individual settings. I will touch on the fact that I do like to use ambient occlusion on my static objects. My depth perception kind of over the years as I've gotten a bit older has kind of declined, so I think this gives me a little bit more depth to my game and helps me see better. It will give you more frames to turn it off, but since I'm blind and I'm old, I like to use it on static. As we kind of go down this list, I kind of use tessellation for the same exact reason, only on the near objects though. You don't want to set it to all. If you don't really struggle with that depth perception issue, then I would just set it to off because you're going to get, again, more frames. And then lastly on this list here, I do want to touch on the water quality. You should be setting this to either water caustic or all. Water caustics is the setting that basically allows light to reflect from inside the water, allowing you to see people that are in the water a little bit clearer. You shouldn't have this on off. Want to really preserve your frame, set it to caustics. I just use both because F it at that point. For the view settings, I like to use max FOV. You kind of get a little bit of variance here in what people use, but the main thing is making sure you crank this up at least to 100. A lot of the multiplayer people play on 105 to 110. A lot of the Warzone people play on 120. I think that's the mutual consensus at least. And then make sure 100%, regardless of what FOV you play on, make sure you're setting this to effective. It's going to make you feel like you have less recoil. For the rest of these settings here, make sure that they're just the exact same as mine. Kind of helps with the clarity of the game again, like for example that film grade and the motion blur blur, which for some weird reason on by default. Camera movement being on 50% also kind of helps with the visual recoil. Makes your camera not move as much, giving you again kind of that perceived less recoil. For the audio settings, I'm kind of tweaking around a lot of this stuff. I'm not going to have this speaker output or anything like that. I am using the Artist War audio stuff. If you guys don't know what the heck I'm talking about, it's a PC thing. If you guys aren't on PC, you should 100% be on PC speaker. A little bit counterintuitive. If you guys aren't using the Artist War audio tune, you probably should also be on PC speaker. And the reason for that is just because it makes everything just sound the loudest, allowing you guys to hear the best. I'm using some weird custom audio stuff that I don't really want to explain or get into because I don't think I'm qualified to talk about it very well. If you guys want to know more on that, just look up the Artist War audio. Posted an updated video like 2 days ago. Master volume, this doesn't really matter. I just like to set it to 50 and 100. Make sure your effects is on 100. Rest of it is just preference. Voice chat, proc chat, all that fun stuff I leave on just because why not? Make sure this is not set to mono audio, and the rest of these settings are basically just preference. Now I do want to touch on something I've seen lately in the interface. I'm gonna go ahead and just quickly scroll through my interface settings really quick, and then I'm gonna actually talk about what I want to mention. I do use the center dot and I set it to larger because I think it does help with the centering. That's one of those preference things, but that's not actually the setting I want to fully talk about today with you guys, that I'm starting to see a lot of, especially pro Warzone people use. And that setting is actually the HUD bound. Now, when you first click this, if you have it on default, which I believe it's starting on default right now, what this is going to basically allow you to do is it's going to allow you to move your heads-up display, aka like your armor, your name, your money, your mini-map especially. And it's going to allow you to kind of move all of those in and down if you so choose. So for example, when I go to this HUD bounds, I could move this all the way to the middle and kind of scrunch in my HUD. And I can even actually move it down a little bit too, kind of pushing it more towards the middle of the screen. I personally don't shorten the top because I think it looks way too weird and it blocks way too much of the screen. However, I'm seeing a very wide range of people now starting to move their minimap just kind of closer in like this, because it just makes it a little bit easier to read your minimap without having to look too far from the middle of your screen when you're in a gunfight. This is going to help you stay focused and not miss stuff that you're seeing in front of you, but also help you not miss anything on that minimap, which is super important. All right, and now we're going to talk about my controller settings. I do play on the default button layout. If you guys don't have a custom controller, shout out to AIM controllers. You can use code KP for their lifetime warranty controllers. They just actually released a feature which will prevent you from getting stick drift, which is crazy. You can get the pre-orders right now. Like I said, code KP or the link in the description for that to save big. But if you're not using one of these amazing custom controllers, I personally would recommend either using tactical or trying to get used to bumper jumper. Bumper jumper is definitely a weird setting. However, it will be worth getting used to with time. Like I said, since I have 4 paddles and a bunch of other custom settings on my controller, I just like to leave mine on default. Bumper pings you want to turn off. I don't like to play flipped for the L1, L2. You can if you want to. If you're on a default controller, I would definitely flip this. You're going to get much faster and responsive triggers because you don't have to press as far to make it shoot. Controller vibration, you should turn that off. Trigger effect needs to be off 100%. For the dead zones, I like to use 3 and 50 on my left stick. 3 is going to be my minimum for my left and my right. I think it's the best. I know by default it's on like 15 or something like that. You should be no higher than 5 and it should be no lower than 2. 3 is kind of that happy medium for me where I feel like I don't get a ton of stick drift, at least right away when it comes to using a new controller. It allows me to move and snap onto people relatively quickly. Now, the reason for the left stick being at 50 is because having this on 50 means that I have to push my analog stick 50% of the way in any direction to hit that fastest moving tack stand state. This is really helpful for those auto tack sprint users, and I highly recommend dropping yours down to at least 50 if you're using it as well. For the right stick, this maximum should definitely be on 99. Do not lower this, please. It will 100% hinder you. For the aiming settings, I like to play 8.75, a pretty standard Warzone sense. A lot of people play on anywhere from 6 to 8 when it comes to this game, and this is kind of again that happy medium, right? 8 allows you to look around for a pretty good bit and have kind of fast movement, allow me to loot fast, yada yada. 0.75 allows me to have a sixth sense when I ADS and go to shoot somebody. I leave the rest of these settings on pretty much default, so I'm just gonna go ahead and flick through these really quick. You do need to change your aim response curve to dynamic though, 100%. Linear is not worth it. Standard not really worth it. By default it's on standard. Dynamic allows you to be the most precise without hindering your look around speed. That's basically the way I'm going to super simplify it. A little bit more complicated than that, but that's basically all you need to know. If everybody plays with dynamic, you need to be using it. And then for the rest of these, man, I pretty much just leave these all on default. Make sure your aim assist is turned on and you're good. For gameplay, I like to use automatic tack sprint. I do put slide to maintain sprint on. I do think it helps when it comes to the fluidity of just being able to run around and slide around the map. Auto move forward, make sure that's turned off. You want to be using single tap sprint. Round to mantle, I do leave on, even though it is kind of annoying that when you slide, you will climb on stuff. It's definitely a bug and they'll 100% fix it. The other mantle settings though, I do turn these off. Slide and dive behavior. Talked about this a few weeks ago in another video I made, how I hated this setting and how it was all the time would accidentally dive. And honestly, after a few weeks using this, I'm still accidentally diving sometimes. I had no idea how many times I was actually smashing my sprint button trying to run around in gunfights. For those of you guys that don't know how this setting works, if you're pushing down your L3, your sprint button, and you click your slide button, this setting will actually make you dive. Cool thing about this though is if you have hybrid on, as long as you're not pressing in that left analog stick, that sprint button, when you click circle, you will instantly slide. So it allows you to basically one-click slide and one-click dive, depending on whether or not you have that sprint button pushed in or not. If you play on automatic tack sprint, this setting is perfect. You just have to get out of the habit of actually pressing your left analog stick, which I still do on accident sometimes. I think with some time, this setting will 100% be worth using, so I'm trying to get used to it right now. Plunging underwater, make sure that's on free. Auto deploy parachute should be turned off. The sprint door bash doesn't really matter. The ledge climb, I have it to be movement based. For the rest of these settings, man, you guys should just copy these. Most people already know about the prioritize interact stuff. You go to one-click loot everything. Your plate should always be on apply all, and there isn't really a whole lot of other settings in here that I need to talk about. Like I said, just copy the ones from then on out, and that is literally everything you guys need to know. I will go ahead and do like a quick little run through again of just everything, just so that way you guys can copy. If you're just trying to pause it, copy it, whatever you guys want to do, that's totally fine. Just so that you have it kind of all in one place if you're trying to follow along, instead of having to like sit there and pause it every couple minutes in like an 8-minute video. It's kind of annoying. Hopefully I'm not flicking through this stuff too fast for you guys, but I think for the most part that covers everything. Again, if you guys found this video helpful, please consider leaving a like, some of the channel. If you guys are new, I post videos like this every single day to keep you guys in the loop. We're going to be posting the new MTZ 556 tomorrow, which they just recently buffed, so I'm super excited to get on tonight and try that out. And I'm also live on Twitch right now if you guys want to come ask me questions in real time. Links to that are all going to be down in the description. With that, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day.